So, good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another interview of the Chill Dude on a Couch. I'm your host, Hector, and today I'm joined by Damian Bennett, and he plays bass and also does
hmm
samples of the band Cost. So, first of all, Damian, how are you today?
Good, thank you, Hector. Great to speak to you.
Yeah, great as well. So, I listened to the album. This is going to be your fifth release. So,
hmm
for people who haven't listened to the band, how would you explain what you are all about?
It's not a traditional metal band. It's not a traditional metal experience, but it hits in so many ways, I think, in sort of heavy metal terms that other bands sort of don't. Um, it comes across as almost, I think it's the way Andy does his guitars as well. There's a certain sort of sound which goes into almost a non-guitar world. I can't describe it. And I think that's what you hear from the first album. It is very much a wall of sound, which we like. And it leads to some really interesting possibilities because you're not limited to maybe certain structures um, in terms of verse, chorus, solo, this sort of stuff. The songs do have their own sort of structures, obviously, but sometimes it goes into pretty abstract territories, and that's a lot of fun live. So basically, when it's live, it hits from what you almost want to call electroacoustic, almost like industrial noise elements come in sometimes, and um, and then the guitars. It's almost sometimes it feels almost like performance art because we have the guitars and we have the presence on stage and the vocals, okay, but there's another sort of spirit that comes into it, I think. And if we're blessed with a really good venue and a really good mix, it goes into another territory. It's not typical, okay? And we've had some really good nights where it becomes just this big ambient is maybe a misleading word, but it has a big presence. And we've had some people that we've worked with, people who know us over years, who know how to EQ the sound as well. And people who just get it, and it will hit like a massive wall. But then there's really contrasts as well. The contrasts are really they're really significant. So it'll just drop, and then you'll have other voices that'll come in, and the voices could be all sorts of sources of people that we know over years, and they could be spoken word voices, they could be incidental voices, but we like things which aren't, it's not always meant to be a big statement or a drama. It could be just a small interlude, you know. And we do spoken word. There's spoken word on this record. There's been spoken word scattered throughout all of them, but we similarly with the albums try to structure it so it's not just a compilation. So the album's not just a compilation of tracks from beginning to end, like blah 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 blah. It is meant to be some sort of voyage to an extent. It's hard to say without sounding corny. You know, you could say, oh, it's a voyage, it's an experience, you know. But it is meant to have a lot of facets and a lot of detours, okay? And that's the sort of fun part. It's like you're at home at night and you're listening to something and you hear a noise downstairs and you think, oh, what was that sound? We like that disorientation. And we managed to make it happen live. We also use visuals live as well, always a projector with us, and the visuals are always kept up to date. So it's not just like stock photographs or cliches. We like to have things behind us which are surprising and they change. We've used multi-projections as well, so there might be something happening on that wall as well, which is different. And they try to tell the story too. So it is, if you think, I suppose, when you go to a festival and you'll see bands and they've got the, you know, the amps and they've got a backdrop and some graphics and they've got the the usual sort of thing of maybe guitarist or two, singer sort of thing. That's the format. We like to think we can fit in. We've played many festivals, but it's just a bit of a different approach.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, and
Yeah.
When I was listening to the album, which by the way, I like the album is called Many Things Afflict Us, Few Things Console Us, which that's a great album title. When I was listening to it, it felt like almost it could be like the background sound to maybe like a horror movie or like a creepy video game as well.
We like those.
Yeah, the
The
horror
best,
movies or
the
the creepy
best,
video games.
the best films are the ones with it's counterpoint. It's like they've got an innocence about them. You think of Rosemary's Baby. It starts off looking like it looks like a serial, almost like a situation. There's a guy and a girl, simple, and it looks like a domestic thing, like a serial or something from the 50s or the 60s. And then it's completely subverted in the worst way possible. That's just thrilling to me, as opposed to some guy running around with a chainsaw or, some sort of cliche occult thing. It's that sort of counterpoint, which is really cool to me. And it's true too. Like there's a connection with Polanski, with so Rosemary's Baby, but also his version of Macbeth is something else. And it's something, especially if you watch the old, it's the film stock. It looks like the time, early 70s. And it has this archaic music. And it's from a band from, I think, the hippie period, Third Eye Band, I think it is, playing it. It sounds this creaky, sort of hurdy-gurdy sort of music, whining sort of sounds. Sounds great, and it's deteriorated over time. It's so analog, But the horror in Macbeth, it's the first time I've seen it. There's not many times which the horror and the sort of maybe the gothic horror of Shakespeare is really, it comes across, it's really blunt. It's really blunt. And that is a trip. And anyway, to say that those sort of things that you do in films, and also even old 70s, 80s TV horror, things you'd see late night on TV, or even go back to Rod Serling, so in the Twilight Zone, those sort of things, black and white. It wouldn't look as good if it was up to date. The fact that it's in black and white, we love all that sort of thing, I think. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and the music, and you get that feel like when you say I was listening to music without visuals, but I can understand how when you're putting visuals, I think would help the feel of this music. And this album it's got 18 tracks, but it's 39 minutes. So you got interludes, but you got you got two, like I think there's two longer tracks with Define the Edge of Someone, and the other one I think is TBSB. Those are like the longer tracks almost at the end. And to me, they're tracks that build like it's like a moody atmosphere, like, and it builds tension to me, like, because sometimes you have like there's parts of the song where you keep like this sound for like a minute, and then it changes and it's kind of eerie. So I know this album is more, it's more instrumentation and some spoken word, but is there like a theme to this record for you?
Yeah. Well, we tend to delve into those sort of twilight sort of elements, where we always have the feeling of there's other forces or there's other people or presences. Always fascinated by that. It's important to say that this album evolved too from maybe a couple of years ago, and we very much important because, as I say, we don't just write. I hear about some metal bands though; they almost say, "Oh yeah, we've done maybe 8 songs for the new album. We've got another couple to go," and it's almost like they're going through the motions to fill up what is an album. Whereas this one, we tend to organically compile. So those songs, they came over time that you mentioned. The second one that you mentioned right at the end was because we're big Pink Floyd fans, and we were talking about it once. We got talking about Pink Floyd, especially the era of Live at Pompeii and Echoes and all this sort of stuff, metal, etc. And we wanted something with this languid sort of flow, and we were almost going to build it up even more, but we've left it at the stage it is now. And then it ended up at the end of the track, at the end of the album. So we didn't just write, track. These all have evolved from different times and different scenarios. Anyway, getting back to what you were saying, we always look into external forces, and sometimes this can become quite, in terms of themes, it can be quite sinister too. On the album before this, which is Buried Steel, you'll see towers, like corporate towers on the cover. And this features sometimes in the artwork of the, in the projections, and that we use live. And it's maybe you'll see it in post-punk bands. You'll have this sort of thing where you'll have a sense of modern life and civilization, which is obviously, we question that, in terms of how we live and the forces that we feel. So it's not all occult sort of thing. It's also, we like to talk about the modern world and the sort of forces we feel. It could be from corporate pressures. For me, it's what they do to the planet in terms of making money from the natural world, despoiling the planet. Greenwashing to me is sinister in terms of, you'll always get these big oil companies and big petrochemical, fossil fuel driven companies who will always put out adverts that everything's green, we're going to a better future. They've got wind turbines and all this sort of stuff. But we know it's all extremely and aggressively profit motivated. And these people they ruin people's lives. They couldn't care less about sustainability, even though that was a big buzzword, sustainability. Anyway, so those forces and how we exist and how we get by, we love to put those things in there. We always have to, we like to depict, I suppose, the human state, how we live, and then how other forces transgress onto us. And so it's juxtaposing the way we live now, but with things that other forces that could almost seem like occult or bad forces. And it's something that a lot of the post-punk bands, I think, did as well. If you think about, people like Killing Joke or Gang of Four, these sort of people from some time ago now, it still sounds very modern, questioning what we deem as modern. Those things are very important to us because that's very much a lot of our roots in terms of coming up through punk and post-punk. And I think it's still really valid. And all the sort of hardcore bands, that sort of stuff is really sort of central to what they do, in terms of being aware of what forces are out there, what's shaping the planet in good and bad ways. They're big themes for us.
Yeah, and I can tell, like the moodiness of the record. And I'm glad you mentioned your last record, Buried Steel, with the with the buildings, because now I can talk about the new artwork, which is inside of a building. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah. So you have stairs and like very like ominous looking stairs. So tell me a little bit about the artwork for the new record.
Yes, I mean, that's the thing. It's for me, I find it fascinating that if we talk about like ancient monuments, you talk about Stonehenge in England, or you talk about the pyramids, or you talk about ancient temples scattered across the world. These people built these for whatever reason. They took a long time and a lot of love and a lot of care, went into the design of these things and to last forever. And then it's, to me, I was thinking the other day, when you think about a lot of the structures that are built, even in the last 100 years, how long are they actually meant to be there for? I mean, some of these monuments I talk about, I mean, we don't know the full story of, that could be born, could have been created from tyranny. We don't know the hardship that went into them. All of that stuff aside, basically, they've lasted and lasted for thousands of years. And you think about a lot of the way our cities are structured, and these sort of iconic buildings that you see that have come up mostly in the last sort of 100 years or so, how many of them were actually built for a really long-term view? And then you think, well, probably none of them. They're probably just built in the spur of the moment by property developers, etc. And they may or may not be safe. They may or may not meet a lot of safety requirements and such. I don't want to go off into a path about architecture, etc.
Yeah.
But it's more, you know what I mean? It's more the short-term thing of you build this entity, and then in 20 or 30 years, it's derelict, and it's got trees growing out the top. In Birmingham, where the band's based, that you see these places up to, you see them in America, you see them everywhere, where basically you've got a big skyscraper. So from the distance, you've got a skyline. They call it a skyline. That defines a city, doesn't it, to modern humans? And then you look closer, and one of them's got all the windows smashed out, and it's got graffiti on the side. And as I say, it's got trees growing up the top. And you think, wow, that is it's just tolerated. Do you know what I mean? But we don't know, why did that happen? Why did it fall into disrepair? Godflesh have got a song called Towers of Emptiness, and I'm wondering, I've never spoke to Justin about it, but I'm wondering if it's a similar sort of thing where it's just these short-term grabs and you don't know what was there before. Because I'm a big fan of cities, I always have been, but I really love cities where they look after their past and they protect their heritage. And you don't know, especially if you know London, all the great bars, venues, shops, could be boutiques, which are just leveled because of a notion of progress, which doesn't exist anymore, and how many people just put up with it? Again, it comes down to these forces I'm talking about, shadowy forces, that what defines a city where we live, it's just more sort of junk piled on top of junk, which will be pulled down at some stage. I mean, in London, there was the great venue called the Astoria, which had countless amazing nights and amazing bands, gigs, which was just leveled almost overnight because of a new sort of transport situation, which I don't even know now if it's been resolved, and this is a long time ago. And I'm thinking all those memories went with it. But you think of all the great cinemas, ballrooms, etc., from the 20s, the 40s, the 50s, etc. Again, the same thing, just level. Anyway, so this sort of thing, it not only is interesting to us, and that's something that you'll see on the cover here, but it creeps into the music too, because the music itself, it's
yeah, because this building looks clearly abandoned.
Absolutely, yeah. So why was it built in the first place, and with what sort of complete dedication did they have, the planners who worked there?
Yeah. Interesting. So the album title, I think it's an interesting album title. Many things afflict us, few things console us. Tell me a little bit about that album title, the inspiration for it.
Well, that one came to Andy. He's got his own view on that one, and he's interested. It's a shame he can't be here. But I always think of it as something, it's almost like a voice from nowhere. It says this to you, and you think, well, where are you in life where you suddenly hear this voice? Maybe you're having an issue with something, maybe it's not a good day or something like that. But I feel like it's more, to me, interesting, who is the person speaking, who is saying this, in terms of they seem to be an entity, like a shadowy entity, who is almost like giving you some sort of insight. And it's that sort of, what do you call it? That sort of shapeless character, that sort of spectre, which I like about it. And that's how it resonates with me. And we hope that that comes, because what we try not to do is spell too much out in the music. A lot of it is meant to be inferred, and you're meant to walk away from listening or from the gig with something still hanging over your head, instead of thinking about it. So it's just a statement. I also don't like explaining too much in case somebody might have their own take on what the how it resonates with them.
No, I totally understand. So I see you have some cool CD. I see you have a Sleep Token CD right there.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're a wonderful band. I think they're a really intriguing band.
I recognize that one. I'm like, yeah, that's Sundowning, I think. Yeah.
It is, yes, yeah. Like they're such a beautiful band in terms of their take on music and their what's the word? Just that they're very unique, and they've also got an incredible drummer. So yeah, like wonderful, 4 really intriguing guys. They've also played. They started at the Black Heart in London, which is a place we love playing. We played there earlier this year.
And we don't know who's in the band. You might be in the band, and I don't know it.
Don't want to know. I don't want to know. That's the best bit. It was always the best bit as a kid, not knowing about the band and not knowing any idea about who was. If you talk about Fear, the band Fear. It's like I don't know if you call Fear just a punk band or a punk influenced rock band, but I know about Lee Ving, the singer. And I don't know who else was in that band, but I know I love Fear.
Yeah, I just know that guy because I saw him in a. Yeah, but I don't know who else is in the band. That is true. Yeah, but with Sleep Token, I remember for their last album, I think they put some identities or something, but they put it down. But I think that's the good of the band, not knowing who they are. That's like the fun part of the band. Yeah. So yeah. So I see you have a collection there. Like what type of music do you usually listen to?
Oh wow. Okay. At the moment, I love a lot of hardcore punk music, whatever. I love the way hardcore has changed, and over the last decade, it's just gone into so many interesting areas. But also, I love from the late 90s, a sort of post-hardcore music, which I guess bands like Fugazi started. That's not a big fan. I'm not a big, they're not a favorite, but I know that they started this post-hardcore sound. And then you had bands like Slint, and then you had a lot of bands which are then classed as almost screamo. So you had bands like Portraits of Past, who are a very unknown sort of band sometimes, but superb. But these sort of bands, there's so many of them, and periodically I will take a deep dive and find out more sort of bands like this. Anything to do with screamo or like Touche Amore, Deaf Heaven, this sort of stuff. I just love listening to them. I've seen Deaf Heaven countless times, and it's always such a trip to see how they play, and the level that they reach as well. But yeah, there is a lot, and a lot to go into, but it never stops. I also love country music. I love underground country music. I love from a lot of countries too, as well as the traditional stuff, the real gritty outlaw country music. But in terms of underground stuff, that is crazy in terms of the new artists that come up all the time. And they're a lot of fun, in terms of they can be pretty direct with their lyrics as well. Super.
Yeah, no, it seems like you have a varied taste in music, and and that's a good thing. And it's good to see people like keeping up with newer bands. Because sometimes people of like older age, like like people like from that age says like, oh, there's nothing new good. So it's good that you're supporting like new music as well.
Gosh, it never stops.
Yeah, good. That's a good thing because I hate it when I talk to people like they're like, oh, there's nothing good now. I'm like, there's lots of things you can search for things. You just need to not be lazy. So I know the album's gonna be out this Friday, September 20th, and you're putting it out through is it Cold
Cold Spring.
Springs, the name of Cold Springs?
Yes,
So once that is out, I saw that you are playing some shows, but they're not going to be until November, right?
that's right. Yes.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about the upcoming shows that you guys are playing in November.
We're playing with Deep Cross, who are good friends. We played in America with them, which was really, really good. And each night was different. And they're a really unique band. They're a great band, Deep Cross. So yeah, that will be just a short tour, mostly in the UK. And same thing, we'll be bringing the visuals and the vibe with us. That'll be super great. Yeah, they are superb.
Yeah. So the process of recording this album,
Yes.
how do you guys tackle the recording process? Like, how long did it took? Because I know this type of music with the samples and things. So I was wondering, like, the process of the band for that.
Yeah. Okay. Generally, Andy will he will outline the tracks. As I say, his guitar sound is really key, and it will be, I suppose, outlined, and then I will feed back. I will play a part in this. I give suggestions if something. It's like, oh, what if something happened here? Some of the tracks on this, they came, as I said, there was a discussion because we love Pink Floyd, and out of nowhere, this track came. But there's other ones there too, which were directly influenced by post-punk, early Joy Division, Warsaw. It was an influence. Also DAF. And I think that's the great thing with music. If you wake up one day and say, I would love to have a track like this, or imagine if, and you imagine another band, they played a track like this, what would it sound like? And then you just make it. So these sort of tracks came in, but it is a process of as I said, Andy will have the whole thing generally, the sound, and then I will feedback. But a lot of it comes through the live process too, and in particular sound checks, where you test sounds and you get ideas that way. It's really important. And certain thing, and also because when we're driving, we listen to a lot of music too. I think sometimes things filter in terms of we get influenced by certain things. For some of the spoken word, there's a lot of detail that goes into them. It was the case too on the previous albums. Stephen Mallender was the voice from Cabaret Voltaire for Yellow Light. And he and I had a discussion on the track and what it should sound like. And as we were discussing, I was trying to imagine what should come up behind him. And so this evolved. Same with the Axe Breaker track on the new album. We played with Axe Breaker in the States. He's really, really quite overwhelming. He's so good. I've seen a lot of people with microphones and electronics, like a table of electronics. You see a lot of these sort of people, but this is something else. It really is a living, breathing organism. It's beautifully done, and it is so hardcore. It's so incredible. So we were really privileged that he contributed, and so we worked together
He's
on
on a
the
few
lyrics.
tracks, right?
Pardon?
He's on a few tracks, I saw.
Yeah, but we were so privileged because we thought, right, what's it going to sound like? We worked on the lyrics and the theme of the lyrics, and then it turned into a bit of a battle to like, come on, we've got to come up with something to match that voice. That was super cool to do. On the track Overrun, that was a late night inspiration.
With
Just suddenly
Manuel
found something.
Libeskind.
That's right. Manuel and I go way back. We go way back. He's a sound engineer. We recorded music together. He has done the live sound for Oxbow many times, the band Oxbow. Milk Banana, he's worked with. And basically, he pops up on Buried Steel. Again, it's a short story. We don't say, oh, this is we don't dictate this is what the story's about. We like to let it hang in the air. Now, for this one, same thing, in terms of there was a certain mood I'd come up with, sound-wise, sound design, if you like, and then started sketching out ideas for vocals and put it to Manuel. I think he did maybe 3 or 4 takes, totally different takes, using different mics, mic placements, etc. And we then mixed bits from each into the track. And but as you can see, it's always organic. It's like this. And so, yeah, but we kept writing after this as well. So there's also already material that's arisen going forward. And that's the way, it should be, really. It's so cool when you do it on the spot too, because you may come back to it a week or two later, or a month or a year, and you say, what's that? I didn't think about it so much then. I like it now, and now I've got something different for it. So, I think it is pretty much an unsleeping process. We should always get the structure down, write it down on some paper, record it onto a dictaphone, and get all those ideas as much as you can, harness them when you can. And then when you need them, come back to them, and have a look. I like putting things on the back burner too, just think I'll let that sleep for a bit. I might work on the drums or something like that. But yeah, it's ever growing.
And when you guys are playing live,
Yeah.
do you like to play exactly the record, or do you improvise sometimes?
Yeah, it is improvised. There's also always at the top of the set, there's a big improvisation. Oh my God, it's a long day. There's always the thing. What generally happens in the set is that we have a certain, if you want to call it, power electronics sound that usually happens at the start of the set. And Andy will use a cornet. It's like a trumpet, a style of trumpet. This is influenced maybe by the throbbing gristle type wave of music, throbbing gristle. So you have this, he puts a delay on it, and he starts over this wall of sound, he'll start playing this into the microphone. So you get this long delay, and that sounds super cool in a big venue. And again, it's not stock metal. Do you know what I mean? To bring out a trumpet.
Yeah.
So that generally, depending on the venue, depending on the crowd, depending on the ambience, it's always different. And that sets the tone. And we also haven't got it with us now, but in the past we've used a live reel-to-reel recorder. And that reel-to-reel was old and dying. Playhead, the recording head's not good. That added to it. So they were sort of deteriorating a little bit. That was cool to play live, because you had this old sort of almost like a 1950s in terms of quality sound coming out through the big PA. It was cool. But absolutely, definitely, with the during the set, we do deviate, not too much. We like to keep it, like I say, like a structured wall, very much. But then there are times when it does, we do maybe go on a slightest tangent. It depends. And if you get, if you're lucky with feedback, or you've got something that you try that works and you think that's cool, but we do keep control over it too. so we don't deviate too much. It does change though, and we change the set.
Yeah, to keep it interesting and not get bored. Yeah, I would totally
Absolutely.
think that. So yeah, so this tour, is it gonna be like a small club tours, or is it gonna be like bigger venues?
Yeah, it's a variation.
Yeah.
Um, do really like playing big venues, really like it. But for me, this is just me personally. I tend to think a lot about venues nowadays. Now, in answer to your question, it's going to be smaller, mid-sized venues. Okay,
Mhm.
one of them is a place. In Bristol, which we played in the past. It's got a really beautiful old interior, but when I see a band or an act in a really big venue, sometimes I don't love it as much as I used to. Um, and because, like I said, I love a lot of hardcore and punk. And if you watch a lot of, maybe on YouTube, you watch a lot of hardcore videos. Like there's some YouTubers that they cover hardcore. It could be in like a local community club, and all the lights are on. You know what I mean? And I love that. Or it could be in somebody's house, or it's in a record
Oh yeah,
shop.
the house shows, or
Yeah,
here in Puerto Rico we have a venue that's kind of like shitty and grindy, and it's called La Respuesta. And a lot of bands. I'm actually seeing a band this Friday. I
good.
don't know if you've heard of them, but they're not hardcore. They're a prog metal band from Norway called Circus Maximus, and I'm seeing them on Friday.
Wow, how cool. And what's the
Yeah,
venue?
yeah. It's here in Puerto Rico. It's called La Respuesta. So it's like a small stage bar. So yeah, I don't think that you shouldn't fit more than 300 or 400 people there because it's tight. But yeah, I like the intimate setting of like small shows, especially for hardcore or punk bands. Like a
Yeah, yeah.
small setting is like good. Like because you get that energy.
It's true. And with a lot of the screamo guys so we're talking like the noughties and the 2010s, you'd see this footage of some great bands, and they're playing in venues where the audience is around them. And I just love that. There's one band called Ampere, Ampere, who are one of the big ones for me, one of the great bands of this era. And yeah, so you see them, and it's all old camcorder footage, and I just love that. I could watch it all night. It's just that sometimes there was a really good metalcore. I love metalcore. Really big, fantastic metalcore act. I miss them. I won't mention who, but I missed them the last tour. So I looked up the footage, and they were playing a fairly standard rock venue. And I don't know if it was them or who it was, but they had like smoke bombs and the lighting, flashy lighting. And I thought it doesn't fit them. In my mind, they're a really sort of organic band. They're really tough and really
That
incredible. Well,
sounds more
this
like
stuff,
a Nine Inch Nails show.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But that's the stuff to me. I think we're past that now, where we're not amazed by that anymore. So when you see the standard computerized lighting and whatever, sometimes, like if you saw great Meshuggah shows, they did that crazy thing some years ago where it seemed to be in sync perfectly. And I saw one of those shows, which was just astonishing. So when it's done really well, that's great,
Yeah.
And those guys, it's almost like the lighting had its own, it was like artificial intelligence that was really weird. It was like, not only was it in sync, but it was doing something else that was almost like another presence in the band. It was just freaky, how it was. So I love that. But generally, when it's on a big venue and you have the lights and the effects and, like I say, the backdrop, it's sort of standard. So anyway, for this tour, it's going to be really varied in terms of venues and the atmosphere. And it was the same in America in terms of the venues. There was some really interesting venues, sure, but we also got to play St. Vitus in New York, which was great. And
Which, yeah, unfortunately closed. Yeah.
that's it, it's gone. And we were
Yeah.
heartbroken because there was such a great atmosphere there. Everyone was in it. Was interesting that you could tell there was a culture there, if you know, in terms of the people that ran the place, the friendliness. Whoever, the gent that did the sound was just awesome and got it immediately. And yeah, heartbreaking. But you know, so
Yeah,
like
it
this, it's
sucks
going
when
to
those
be
venues that are like the people in those venues give a shit about the music,
that's
close
it.
down, and then you have these big venues who they don't give a fuck about that type of music, and they just see dollar signs. So yeah, I agree. Like that's a good thing about the show I'm seeing on Friday. Even though it's a smaller venue, the people in that venue care about that type of music. So
Absolutely.
so I think that's a cool thing. So Damien, I know the record is out this Friday, September 20th. I'm gonna post the link for everyone who wants to pre-order. Many things afflict us, few things console us. So I'll post the link for anyone who wants to pre-order. So before I let you go, Damien, anything you like to say to the people before we go?
Oh, just like so privileged to speak to you. Thank you very much, Hector, and to the people in Puerto Rico, you know, and you know, whoever's
And
watching
worldwide.
this.
Yeah, people
Absolutely.
who
Absolutely. Yeah, I hope it's enjoyed. You know, I hope people enjoy it. Absolutely, because yeah, we like to go into a different territories.
yeah. So cultures, if you like some industrial,
Yeah,
doomy electronic type of music, like
that's it.
check this band out, Cost. Uh, uh, so check them out. The album is out this Friday, and they have 4 albums previous to that. So you can check out those albums as well. So Damien, I want to thank you from joining me from your, all the way from the UK here to my couch in Puerto Rico. Thank you for taking some time to chat with me about music, cost, and anything in between. So until next time, couchers, this is Hector, the shield dude on a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.